guys, welcome to a review of the Ellio Max, a very fast e-bike by a company that's a little bit out there, but in a good way. It's been a while since we did a fast e-bike review because it's been a while since I've been in the market for one. But when my Riese Muller Supercharger got stolen in June, I went through the 5 stages of grief and then hit research mode. So I've been testing some different models, and I think it would be a waste not to turn that research into a couple of videos, because it can be hard to find information by people who aren't trying to sell you anything, because they tend to gloss over any potential weak points. And like any bike, the Ellio Max has a couple of those, but mostly it's an unconventional bike by a brand that's not afraid to do things differently and is a great fit for a certain kind of cyclist. It was built around a unique drivetrain they developed themselves with 2 motors, rear and front, and 2 belts, and you can definitely feel that difference. There's a lot of convergence in the market for fast e-bikes, especially at the high end. You see a lot of brands gravitating towards the same kind of motors, geometries, and transmissions, and Ellio is different for better or worse. And for years, that difference was very apparent as soon as you laid eyes on an Ellio bike, because their only model looked like this: the Ellio Original. Small wheels, big battery, low center of gravity with a long seat post. It looked a bit weird because it was from a company run by engineers, smart people with very strong opinions who had good reasons for that odd-looking geometry. And it actually sold pretty well on the strengths of that unique drivetrain, but in the end, I think it was held back commercially by one of the great unchanging laws of human behavior. With very few exceptions, people do not want to look weird in public. Which is why we now have the bike that we're testing today, the Ellio Max. And this is Ellio's stab at making a non-weird looking e-bike. It's got bigger wheels, a different geometry to match those wheels, and that's pretty much it. It's got the same speed, same drivetrain, same range, same philosophy. It's 1,000 euros more expensive than the original at 8,000 euros, and it's selling quite well, quickly becoming the best-selling model in their lineup. So let me talk you through our experience with this bike, starting with the riding experience, because that's probably the most interesting thing about this, and it's closely tied to the key question: who should consider buying this and who should stay away? If you were to put a modern car in the hands of someone from, say, the 1960s, I think there would be many things that would amaze them. But I think one of them would definitely be the disconnect between what you're doing as a driver and how the car handles that input. Things like automatic transmissions, drive-by-wire, power steering all mean that you're no longer directly in control of the vehicle. You don't actually physically turn the tires when you turn the steering wheel. And it's a lot easier than it used to be, but there's always that disconnect that explains some people's nostalgia for classic cars where you are the one in control. Now, why am I talking about cars in a bike review? Well, because the Ellio, more so than any bike I've ever ridden, has the same combination of a super convenient, effortless riding experience and a certain feeling of disconnect. And the first thing that you notice is the speed and effortless power that this drivetrain delivers. I've heard people describe the Ellio Original as a kid's bike on steroids, and I don't know about the first part of that description, but the steroids are no lie. When I let a friend test out the Ellio Max, his first words were, "This is irresponsible." Not specifically the acceleration in the first couple of seconds, because there are other brands that are faster out of the gate, more aggressively tuned in that regard, but after that, this is really quite speedy. You obviously don't have to go fast, but it's very easy to get to 35 kilometers an hour and hold that speed even in headwinds, which is very convenient for people trying to get to work as fast as possible. And in terms of raw speed, there's hardly anything on the market today, I think, that's gonna beat the Ellio, especially on longer stretches. So this is definitely a strong point of the Ellio Max. But I think it's not necessarily the thing that sets it apart, because when you look at comparably priced fast e-bikes with rear hub motors, they can usually get you to around 45 kilometers an hour or close enough reasonably easy. There's small differences in torque and top speed, but honestly, I think those differences are more about bragging rights than they are about meaningful differences once you're out on the road. Now, two things that are uniquely Ellio, however, are the cruise control and the automatic shifting. The cruise control feels a lot like cheating. Once you hit a certain desired speed, you shift a button to the right and then you just stay at that speed regardless of how hard you pedal. Or at least that's how it used to function, because Ellio added a fifth support mode in a recent update, which automates that process. You accelerate to the desired cruising speed, and then it holds that speed until you hit the brakes. So it's kind of an automatic cruise control, turning the Ellio into some kind of electric scooter, which obviously takes a lot of energy, so you're not going to want to use this feature if you need maximum range. But in terms of sheer effortlessness after a hard day at work, when all you want to do is get home and crash on the couch, this really is hard to beat. The automatic shifting is another classic Ellio feature that you notice right away. Much like an automatic transmission in a car, the system shifts automatically and very smoothly. And my guess is that people on e-bikes very often don't shift all that well, because you can always rely on the motor to power you through any inefficient gear choices. I don't have any data on this, but I can imagine that the fact that the Ellio is constantly making sure you're in the most efficient gear might also make the battery last longer in the real world. And it's much like driving a car with an automatic transmission for a couple of months. Going back to driving stick is like, oh God, this again. Or not, depending on what kind of driver/cyclist you are. If you're a cycling purist, you might really hate this. But I think most people are gonna like that disconnect and the comfort that it entails. One thing that took fairly long for me to get used to is the fact that there's no direct connection between the pedals and the wheels when you are stationary. So if you stop at a red light and you rest your foot on the pedal, it's just gonna go, and I did not like that. And even when you are pedaling and you apply a lot of force, like trying to pull away as fast as possible, the system actually won't let you, and you kind of push through. It's hard to describe, but again, you're not as in command as you are on other e-bikes. You learn pretty quickly that it's best to just go with the flow and follow the bike's lead instead of trying to force through. I used to have a bike with a Bosch motor, which was nowhere near as powerful as the Ellio, but it was a lot more subtle in the way that it delivered that power. It did a great job of making me feel like I was some kind of superhuman going 40 kilometers an hour. The Ellio makes me feel like I'm a regular guy along for the ride on a super bike, if that makes any sense. It's subtle, perhaps, but it's a different riding experience altogether, and one that takes a while to get used to. Oh, and I forgot to mention one thing about the auto shifting. It lets you set your preferred cadence and then shifts accordingly so that you can just hold your cadence even when pulling up, instead of constantly doing that dance where you pedal faster and faster and shift, and then you go faster and faster and shift again. And once you are used to this, you wonder why it's not just a default on e-bikes. And the answer, I think, is that with a traditional e-bike drivetrain, that is actually a very difficult thing to accomplish and to do well. There have been systems by Enviolo in the past, but I've yet to see those on fast e-bikes, and Pinion has announced a comparable feature on their smart shift systems, but that's not on the market yet. I don't actually expect to see it on fast e-bikes under 9 or 10K. So I'm glad we get it here at slightly more affordable prices. What else? In terms of riding experiences, my commute is about 37 kilometers one way, and about 9 of those are inner city traffic, lots of stopping, lots of traffic lights, and personally I like the Ellio Max best outside of the city. It's built for cruising, not really for start and stop traffic. It also doesn't help that it's quite heavy at about 43 kilograms, battery included, a good deal heavier than other fast e-bikes with the same battery capacity. And that does have some advantages in terms of stability, but the maneuverability is not its strongest point, and the same holds for getting up steep hills starting from a standstill. To power that impressive drivetrain, Ellio comes standard with a large 1150 watt-hour battery, and in the highest support mode, you get around 50 kilometers. My commute, like I said, is 37 kilometers one way, and I can charge at work, so I didn't get any range anxiety, though the range indicator on the display is often a bit confusing to me. For example, after I commute home using max assistance and some cruise control, I got this: 35% left in the tank, 9 kilometers of range left. Why only 9 kilometers when I've just done 37 on less than 2/3 of the battery? Shouldn't that be almost 20 kilometers? I suppose it's better for the display to stay on the safe side, but I can't say I trust it the same way I used to trust my Bosch display. And the same goes for the indicated speed. Displays always exaggerate the actual speed by a couple of kilometers, and that's fine, but the difference here is larger than usual. When you're driving at 45 kilometers an hour, the display reads 51. I don't know, I think I'd rather have this be as exact as possible, same with the battery range. It would make the system feel more dependable and finely tuned. So the Ellio Max does excel at quite a few things. But suspension? There's the option of a suspension seat post, and the Ellio Max features a stem suspension. First time I've seen one of those, but actual suspension forks have become so ubiquitous that not getting one on a bike like this, even as an option, is a bit of a bummer. Because even small bumps and potholes do pack a real punch when you're going 55 kilometers an hour. And especially the Ellio Original, with its smaller 20-inch wheels, is pretty vulnerable to bumps in the road, and that does take away a bit of the shine of that very smooth riding experience. Now the good news is that I'm told that front suspension is very high up on the to-do list of Ellio's engineers, so I do hope they will add it before too long. All right, let's talk about some potential downsides to the Ellio Max. The accessories are not amazing. Maybe it's because I'm coming from a Riese Muller bike, because they never skimp on that sort of thing, but the mirror, the saddle, the light, all feel like small steps down for me. The mirror has a good viewing angle, but it's the kind of mirror that sticks out at the side, which is a pain on narrow bike lanes, and Ellio's Facebook forum is filled with people complaining that it just doesn't stay put. One bump in the road and your mirror is pointing whichever way the wind is blowing. The light has a pretty narrow beam pattern and a high beam that doesn't add enough in terms of visibility. I see a lot of people adding extra lights and mounting them to the handlebars, and that obviously works fine too, but it's just more convenient to have them powered by the bike's battery. And speaking of powering things, I do not understand why it still isn't a common feature for e-bikes to have a USB-C port near the handlebars that can charge your phone. They all proudly talk about how far their bikes can take you, but if I'm riding for over 100 kilometers, chances are I'm gonna need some navigation, and my phone is gonna be dead long before I get there. Stromer has a USB port on some of their models, but it used to be in a weird spot near the front light. Now finally, with their SD7, I noticed that they've repositioned it to the bottom of the top tube, and that is great, but I don't want to buy a 13,000 euro bike just to charge my phone. Sorry about that. I was listing the potential downsides of the Ellio Max, and that's not really one of them, or at least not unique to Ellio, but it is on my wish list. And another thing that looks like it maybe shouldn't be on this list is the back pedaling brakes, because they are awesome. You can pedal backwards to do something akin to engine braking, which slows down the bike without touching your brakes. And it recharges your battery. And that is the part that I don't like, it only works if your battery is less than 90%. I'm sure there's a technical reason for that, but brakes that only work in certain situations, that's no bueno. And last on my list of downsides is the fact that a bike like this has so much information stored inside it. Data about how much power I'm delivering to the pedals, about the calories I'm burning, about the number of days that I rode to work last month so my employer can pay me for my efforts so I can afford an 8,000 euro bike. But there's just no way to get to that information. There's no way to customize the display, there's no app, there's no web interface, you just can't get to it. And this is no doubt just the reality of running a fairly small company. Getting all the hardware and software for a bike like this running smoothly is hard enough as it is without having to build phone apps. I get that. I realize that my car can't actually tell me where I drove last month either, but it would have been nice. Okay, before I round this up, because this has turned into a long video, let me circle back to the design. One of Ellio's marketing taglines is the fast e-bike for people who dare to be different. And that was a great line for the Ellio original, but the Max, well, there's nothing all that daring about this one. No one's gonna make fun of you for riding an Ellio Max. It's a bit like a 2020 Toyota Prius. It's well engineered, it's eco-friendly, it's fun to drive, it's inoffensive looking. It's not a sports car. It's not something that you buy for its looks. And I mentioned that because my impression is that a lot of fast e-bike brands are doing their very best to market their bikes like sports cars, down to the naming and the photography, which figures because it's mostly middle-aged men that are buying fast e-bikes, and they do cost a lot of money. So from a marketing perspective, totally understandable. But there is something to be said for the no-nonsense, form follows function approach that Ellio takes. For example, as cool as it is for a Stromer ST5 to have all the cables routed internally, and they really do a great job of that, the question is, does that really matter? We're not in a Tour de France where internal routing might get you 0.1 aero gains. It's just a commuter bike, and that internal routing probably makes it more difficult to service, if anything. Does that mean that I'm completely okay with the Ellio Max's design? Well, I think it looks decent from the sides and from a distance, which is how other people will see you. And that's a good thing. Like I said, nobody wants to look weird in public. The top-down view is a little less flattering to me because it shows how chunky the bike is with that massive battery, and the welding is not exactly subtle. Maybe one day the Max's design will change from a 2020 Prius into a 2024 Prius. That would really be something. Right now, it's fine. It's on par with brands like Clever, and at least heading in the right direction, unlike Riese Muller, who seem intent on adding weirdness to their new generation of bikes, though that's obviously just my very personal opinion. Alright, sorry this took so long. The Ellio Max has a great core system. It has an amazing drivetrain with a driving experience to match, and that automatic transmission remains a really, really strong selling point. Everything around that core system, the accessories, the design is fine, about on par with other bikes in the price range, but not amazing. It's a little different, so it takes a little longer to get used to. If you do test it, don't test it for 15 minutes. Take your time, get to know it a little, and if you can, also test the Ellio original. It might look a bit weird, but it is a funky little thing, and it's the closest you'll get to what Ellio's engineers envisioned for the brand. It doesn't click for everyone, but it's a great feeling when it does. As for the Ellio Max, my conclusion is that at the price, it's hard to beat for a certain kind of cyclist, someone who commutes less than 50 kilometers on relatively smooth roads without too many stops along the way and wants to get there as smoothly and effortlessly as possible. Someone who values speed and convenience a bit more than a traditional cycling feel, and someone who isn't looking for riding stats or sports car design. If that is you, then you're in luck. If not, we do have some other reviews coming up that might interest you. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.